Hi there, welcome back to Geopolitics 102. Today we're on our fifth episode of our Portugal series where we're breaking down specifics and taking a magnifying glass to the specific economic sectors of Portugal and why they're so important. I want to thank you so much for watching Geopolitics 102. My name is Brady Ellis. I've been studying geopolitics for the last 6 years, 5 of which were in college. I have a fascination with pulling one thread on one side of the world and seeing how companies, countries, people are all affected by just someone pulling that string on one side of the world. I realized I have a fascination with it, and I wanted to share it with the world. My plan is today, as we're going to cover with the pie chart, with my handy dandy little pie chart. You can tell that I failed art class when I was in 5th grade. We're going to cover the basics of each service, or so the basics of each economic sector, and why they're important. What do they do? What do they do, and why they're important? What do they make? What they export? And then at the very end, we're going to cover like kind of an investor's sit rep or an investor's meeting. Why? What's so special about Portugal? If you were an investor and this was a stock, why you should invest or why you shouldn't. So strap in, sit back, and enjoy. Welcome to episode 5, specifics into Portuguese industry and economic sectors. Thank you for watching. Hi there. Okay, to jump right in, we're going to start with the service sector of this pie chart. So the service sector is everything from this line to this line. It's about 75% of the Portuguese industry. Now, of that, tourism is for sure 10 to 12%, which is all these dots, black dots right here, right? It's 10 to 12%, but really we should really count it because indirectly tourism affects almost 20% of Portugal's full economy. This is what I've been trying to hammer in the other episodes, is that tourism plays a disproportionately powerful part of Portugal's economy. They're disproportionately reliant on tourism for their economy to function and for their GDP output. Their industry and manufacturing is 22 to 25%. And their agriculture is 2 to 5%. You can see a lot of the other European countries, if you watch the other videos of our series, that most of these agricultural-based economies, agricultural sectors of these economies kind of cap out at 2%, especially if you look at Norway, even if they're massive salmon farms, shout out Norway, they kind of cap around 2% or 3%. But Portugal goes up to 5% because they not only export one thing, they export 3: cork, olive oil, and wine, which all can be thrown under agriculture. So to kind of dive in, now what is a service sector? What you're thinking about bars, you're thinking about restaurants, you're thinking about bakeries and cafes, and you're not entirely wrong. You are pretty on picture, but you're missing the full pie chart. Shout out pie chart. So services also, obviously it includes tourism, but it also includes finance, retail, and transport. So for example, planes, trains, automobiles, we're talking about retail if you're going to a grocery store, getting new clothes, getting new pants, getting, not necessarily fine dining, although that is a section, but fine clothing, jewelry, handbags, just buying consumerism things, right? And then finance, banking, investment, tech, and IT. Those are all part of the service-based economy, which are all things that Portugal is trying to move forward into, right? We should talk about industry and manufacturing. What is their industrial base? What do they manufacture, right? Mainly automotive components, electronic assemblies, and food processing. For example, Portugal is becoming a nearshoring destination for the EU because they have lower wages for workers than, for example, the major automotive main automotive countries like Germany or France. Okay, what they're doing is Audi or Mercedes-Benz are Peugeot are moving and putting up business locations in Portugal, and they're doing their manufacturing in Portugal and sending the vehicles back to Germany because that's cheaper than just building the cars and assembling them in Germany. That's how global economics works. You go where you can get the best price, right? So they're becoming a nearshoring destination. Essentially, again, all that means is they're taking the parts, they're taking the components, they're taking the fabs, and they're moving them to Portugal, building it in Portugal, and exporting it back because they save money. Specifically, it's happening with German car companies because they have low labor costs and they have an amazing set of infrastructure. Finally, let's talk about agriculture. So we've talked in the last episode about how Portugal is just a king at selling cork to the world. They are the largest exporter of cork to the world. They're also in the top 10 for olive oil and wine. If you're drinking port wine anywhere and it was really expensive, it's because it's really good, and it's because it's from Porto, the region in Portugal, in the north. And then olive oil, there's olive trees across the country. They used to be a status symbol for wealth. But those are some of the major agricultural exports. It's the reason why they have a little bit more than other countries, because they have a more of a variety and they're not just specialized in one thing. Now, if you were an investor and you were looking at Portugal like as a stock in the Fortune 500, here's how I would break it down. Portugal has big cojones because instead of indexing in the basics in industry and services, if they're an economy like France or Germany, they're just doing the basic things. What they're doing is they're rolling the dice on tourism. It's a high risk, high reward. Well, kind of mediocre risk, but definitely high reward. It's a standout high margin sector, and that's the reason why they've kind of doubled down on their economy. Because one thing, like, look, they're going to get hit harder when it comes to economic crises like COVID, but they ramp up and they bounce back way faster because it's such a high margin thing. Case in point, if you go to the touristy sectors of downtown Lisbon, downtown Lisboa, you're going to see port wine at, I don't know, $3 or $4 a glass. But if you go to where tourists aren't, or you go to where the locals, the bars, the restaurants, the cafes, the bakeries, you're going to see port wine, for example, at 50 cents, at euro. You can charge tourists more because you have to imagine if you're going to be a tourist in Portugal, you probably have some money, right? So it's a mediocre risk, but it's a high margin sector. We have EU membership, but it has lower labor costs than the majority of the EU. Now, why is that? Well, their economy per capita hasn't necessarily caught up to Germany or France. Now, that's a good thing because all of these major companies are looking at Portugal, and they're saying, wait. Look, instead of hiring, now this is good and bad, positive and negative connotations, so bear with me. They're saying, wait a minute, if you're a German car company, and I'm picking on Germany because this is happening with Audi and Mercedes-Benz, they're saying, hey, instead of just hiring a bunch of Germans to build cars in Germany and then sell them to the world, it is actually cheaper for us to hire Portuguese laborers, ship our cars unfinished, unmanufactured, unassembled to Portugal, have them assemble it in Portugal, put it all together and everything, ship them back to Germany, and then sell them to the world. That's what nearshoring is, right? And they're becoming a nearshoring platform from all different types of companies in all of Europe, especially companies from Northern Europe. So not just Germany or Denmark or Sweden or Norway, but broader Europe as a whole. They are an international renewable energy hotbed. So what does this look like? They have, as we're going to cover in episode 6, they have a massive production of solar, wind, and I want to say hydroelectric power in Portugal. They have to because they import all of the oil and LNG, liquefied natural gas. So they're investing heavily in renewable energy. Not necessarily in the public sector because they've, for the moment, chosen to crack away at the debt. But when they do spend money, when they do spend new amounts of money, they spend it on renewables. And they're trying to traffic private investment into renewables. Being said, a downside of what's going on in Portugal right now is that they have a really thick bureaucracy. So, for example, similarly in America, when you have, let's say if the Democrats control the Senate, and the Republicans control the House, and you have an extremist president on the right or the left, or you're not going to get anything done because even if something passes the Senate, it's not going to pass the House, and the president can't veto it because you don't have a supermajority, right? Similarly in Portugal, because they have a polypolitical party system, wow, it's a tongue twister and a half. These political parties aren't necessarily getting things done fast, and when they get things done, it slows to a crawl. Kind of like in American politics, actually. But there's a really thick bureaucracy because in Portugal, the government controls and handles more things. So business, typically you get permits a little bit slower, you get visas a little bit slower. Things just don't move as quickly as they might in Italy or in France or in Germany. That's just food for thought. There's a really thick bureaucracy. Some things wait until the last minute to get done. But those are some of the pros and cons as an investor you should know. I want to thank you so much for watching episode 5, where we take a deep dive in the specifics of the Portuguese economy, where we cover the service industry and how much it really touches with tourism. We've talked about their industry and manufacturing, where we kind of hinted on and brought up later how they focus on automotive components with their nearshoring platforms, electronic assembly, and food processing as they nearshore for not just automotive parts. And how they're a nearshoring destination for specifically Northern EU companies, but to the wider world of Europe as a whole. And then we've talked about their agricultural industry, how they export cork, olive oil, and port wine. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed. I hope to see you next time in episode 6 as we talk about energy consumption and production. Thank you so much for watching. If you don't want to miss any geopolitics content, please hit subscribe and the notification bell. I'll see you in the next episode.